sky was heavy that night, weighed down by monstrous clouds that churned restlessly, as if they were hiding some dark omen. Rain lashed against the airport tarmac. Thunder rolled like a warning drum, and flashes of lightning sliced across the horizon. It was the kind of weather that already set passengers on edge, but for those boarding Flight 784, a transatlantic flight from New York to Munich, was only the beginning of a nightmarish journey. Inside the cabin, the mood was uneasy. Some passengers fiddled nervously with their seatbelts. Others tried to distract themselves with books, headphones, or the soft glow of their phones. The air smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air, but underneath it all, there was something else. An almost tangible heaviness pressing down on everyone's chest. I was among them, seated by the window, watching droplets race down the glass as the engines roared to life. I told myself it was just a storm, just bad weather. Nothing unusual. But deep down, something felt wrong, something I couldn't name. The plane lifted off, cutting through the storm with a shudder. For a moment, it seemed like things might settle. The fasten seatbelt sign went off, and the flight attendants began moving down the aisle with carts, offering drinks. People relaxed, laughing softly, unwrapping snacks, trying to forget the violent weather outside. And then, everything changed. Just a few rows ahead, a man stood up. He looked different. His presence had already been unsettling. Unshaven face, sunken eyes, clothes damp with sweat despite the cool cabin air. He moved with a restless, jerky energy, his hands trembling slightly. I thought he was just nervous about flying, until he reached into his bag. When his hand emerged, it was holding a gun. The sight of the weapon froze the air. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then came the screams, sharp, desperate, cut short by his roar. Silence! Nobody moves. This plane is mine, and tonight, we all go down together. He grabbed a flight attendant, yanking her close, pressing the barrel of the pistol against her temple. Her tray of drinks clattered to the floor, soda splashing across the aisle, the smell of coffee mixing with the electric tang of fear. Chaos erupted. Passengers ducked, others sobbed openly, a few whispered frantic prayers. The woman beside me fainted, her head lolling against my shoulder, and I could hear children crying somewhere behind us. The storm outside seemed to answer the panic inside. The lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness for 2 terrifying seconds, before sputtering back to life under the flash of lightning. Each blackout made it feel like death itself was reaching closer. The man shouted again, his voice cracked with fury and despair. "Open the cockpit. I want the pilots, now! We crash this plane tonight." Gasps rippled through the cabin. His intentions were unmistakable. This wasn't about money, or politics, or escape. It was pure destruction. He wanted everyone dead. A few brave passengers tried to reason with him. A businessman raised trembling hands, pleading, "Please, don't do this." "You don't have to." But the hijacker swung the gun toward him, snarling. The man sank back down, his words strangled into silence. The flight attendant sobbed softly, whispering prayers as the barrel dug into her head. And then, something unexpected happened. From the rear of the plane, a man slowly stood. He didn't shout, didn't make sudden moves. His eyes were calm, steady, measuring. Later, we would learn he was an off-duty police officer, traveling alone. In that moment, he was just another passenger, but with training, with discipline, with a plan forming in his mind. He didn't rush. Instead, he observed, studied the hijacker's stance, the trembling in his hands, the way his eyes darted nervously whenever thunder shook the aircraft. The officer knew one wrong move could get the flight attendant killed. Or all of us. The hijacker demanded again, "Cockpit, now!" Or she dies. His voice cracked, but his finger was tense on the trigger. The captain's voice came faintly over the intercom, trying to calm him. "Sir, we can talk." but the hijacker fired a shot into the ceiling. The deafening crack echoed like the end of the world, a hole ripping into the metal above us, the cabin filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder. People screamed. Some ducked into the aisles, clutching their heads. The storm outside intensified, the plane shaking under turbulence. It felt like the very heavens were mocking us, eager to tear the aircraft apart. The officer knew he had to act. But how? The hijacker was too alert, too unpredictable. One mistake, and the hostage would die. So he waited. He waited for the storm itself to give him a chance. Minutes dragged like hours. The lights flickered again, plunging us into pitch blackness as thunder roared. In that exact moment, the officer made his move. He lunged forward, keeping low, using the confusion of darkness and panicked screams. The hijacker swung around too late. The officer grabbed his wrist, twisting it hard, forcing the gun away from the flight attendant's head. She screamed, collapsing to the floor as the two men struggled violently. The gun went off again, a flash in the dark, the bullet tearing through the cabin wall with a hiss of escaping air before the seal systems kicked in. The noise was overwhelming, the smell of gunpowder suffocating. Passengers shrieked, diving to the floor. The plane shook harder, as if caught in the storm's grip. In the strobing light of lightning, I saw the hijacker's face, wild, desperate, teeth bared in a snarl like an animal cornered. The officer fought with relentless precision, forcing the man down into the aisle. The pistol clattered away, kicked under a seat. Other passengers scrambled to grab it, but the officer didn't release his grip. He slammed the hijacker's arm behind his back, forcing him flat against the carpet. Still, the man screamed, thrashing, spitting curses. His voice broke into sobs, then into hysterical laughter. "We're all going to die anyway. You can't stop it. The storm will kill us." The officer shouted for belts, ropes, anything. Passengers tore off their seatbelts, handed him scarves, ties, whatever they could. He bound the hijacker's wrists tightly, ignoring his struggling, then his ankles. The man writhed like a trapped beast, but he was finished. And yet, the fear didn't leave us. Not yet. Because the officer didn't hand him over to the crew, he didn't trust him out of his sight. He dragged the bound man to an empty row and forced him into the seat, securing him with multiple belts, tying him so tight he could barely move. Then the officer sat right beside him, never breaking eye contact, gun retrieved and pointed directly at the man's chest. The rest of the flight was agony. Every flicker of the lights, every jolt of turbulence, every groan of the engines felt like the end. The hijacker muttered constantly, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes whispering threats under his breath. His eyes never stopped burning with that desperate madness. And the officer never flinched, his hand steady on the weapon, his body tense as steel. When at last the announcement came, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Munich," tears broke across the cabin. Relief, overwhelming, and raw. But the officer stayed unmoving, his gaze fixed on the bound man who had tried to kill us all. The plane touched down with a shudder, wheels screeching against wet asphalt. The moment it stopped, armed security forces stormed aboard. But even then, the officer didn't relax until the hijacker was dragged away, screaming into custody. As we disembarked, shaken and pale, the truth settled in. We had been seconds, maybe inches from death. We had looked into the face of despair, into the eyes of a man who wanted nothing but destruction. And we had survived, not because of luck, but because one man refused to let fear control him. That night, I realized something. Monsters don't always come from storms, or shadows, or nightmares. Sometimes they sit just a few seats away, waiting to reveal themselves. And sometimes it only takes one brave soul to face them down and save us all. And that's where our terrifying journey ends. A flight that nearly turned into a nightmare beyond imagination. Luckily, courage defeated despair. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more chilling tales coming your way.